Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's finally time to set up October in my bullet journal, and as you saw in the intro, my theme this month is magical computer screens, and I got the inspiration from Amanda Rach Lee's 2020 September theme. This is going to be a bit more decorative theme than my last one, so grab a tea or snack and I hope you enjoy the video. I started off by drawing the computer screens, and I'm using Archer and Olive acrylic craft pens, mainly from the Cool Fall and Jewel sets. I had to speed up this footage quite a bit because using paint pens takes a little bit longer than using brush pens, for example. These acrylic craft pens have very opaque finish, and it's nice because it gives the illustrations a bit more neater look. I haven't used the Cool Fall set a lot yet, so I had some difficulties getting the ink flow correctly, and that made this process a bit more time consuming because I had to shake the pens and push the tip every now and then. But you can always go back and add another layer on top of the first one to get a smoother finish if you are using paint pens and you are having this problem. After I had drawn the computer screens, I started drawing the illustrations inside of them, and I don't actually celebrate Halloween, but I wanted to do a magical theme still because I think it suits this month really well. Originally I wanted to do a cat theme, but then I realized that I can't draw cats yet, so I have to practice a little bit more. Maybe I'll do that next month. Anyway, I drew these dreamy clouds for the first screen with a little moon, and then I wrote "good things are coming" on top of the screen just to give me some positive vibes and energy for the month ahead. For the second screen, I wrote the title and drew some cute leaves and magical doodles. I just realized that I've been drawing leaves in almost every theme this year, but I can't help myself. Leaf doodles are my favorite thing to draw as they are easy and simple and they fit in almost every theme. While the doodles were drying out, I outlined the clouds and the moon from the first screen with pigma micron 003, and I decided to use this micron with a really small tip because I didn't want very thick outlines. Drawing the borders without the ruler was definitely quite difficult, and I ended up using a ruler for some other spreads because my lines were a little bit wonky. I also added highlights to the crystals with my white acrylic craft pen just to make them look a little bit more three-dimensional. After that, I outlined the rest of the doodles and added the eye inside of the crystal ball and some gold details to the bottle. Next, I started making the rest of the screens, and for this one I drew a book with a brown acrylic craft pen that is actually in the bigger size than the other ones I used for the previous doodles. I also added some decorations with white acrylic craft and gold gel pen. This screen is actually a little goal section. I've only read one book this year and haven't been reading over 6 months, even though I've had that in my habit tracker all this time. So hopefully this reminder on my cover page would finally motivate me to actually read. Do you have this one habit that you just don't do, but you still add it to your habit tracker just to be hopeful that this month you will actually do it? Please tell me that I'm not the only one. Anyway, back to my cover page. I've seen a lot of people making these kind of light grids to decorate their bullet journals, and I didn't want to miss out on that, so I drew them on the backgrounds of my computer screens. In this last screen, I drew a little landscape with clouds and a sunset, and after that I drew some golden sparkles with my jelly roll. I also added titles to the rest of the screens, and then I named the little box Spotify and added the song October Skies to it, which is actually a real song by Mumford & Sons that I listened a lot last year during this time. Then it was time to move on the quote page. I don't do this every month, but now I really wanted to do one as I think quotes fit really well in this theme. The quote that I chose this month is "Aim for the moon, if you miss, you may hit a star." So I drew some clouds and a moon on top of the box and crystals on the bottom corner, and of course I doodled some leaves as well. I don't think this is the most inspirational quote, but it fits really well with the vibe of this theme, so that's why I chose it. I will be also making other little quotes for the rest of the spreads as well. Then I started outlining the doodles and the computer screen. As you can see, I didn't draw the horizontal lines in just one go. I drew them in little sections because that was a little bit easier to do. And by the way, I'm scared of not using a ruler when I'm drawing lines with black pen, because you can see the wobbly lines really well. If you want to learn how to draw straight lines without a ruler, I would recommend doing that with a light color instead, because that's way less intimidating. Now that my cover spread is finally done, I started making my monthly calendar. First I wrote out the header with my Tombow fudenosuke heart tip pen, and then I started drawing another computer screen. And drawing these computer screens and coloring them in is probably the part that took the longest time, because coloring in is a little bit slower with acrylograph pens or other paint pens in general. I made little circular motions when I colored in the boxes, but I actually realized that making little lines works a lot better and leaves a smoother surface. For the little boxes on the bottom, I used Tombow dual brush pen in the shade 992 instead, because I wanted to test out how that would work. The color is pretty similar, but the finish isn't as opaque and smooth as the acrylograph pens. On top I drew another crystal ball and magical bottle with a leaf and a crystal inside of it. I also drew some clouds inside of the calendar because there was a little bit of empty space. By the way, how exciting that October is going to be ending on Sunday, which means November is going to start on Monday. I guess making calendars without messing up the numbers is going to be a lot easier. Anyway, I added this roller thing on the bottom of this calendar. I don't actually know what this is called, so let me know if you know the name of it. Then I started outlining everything with a black pen and adding some white highlights. And now for the most nervous part, which is going to be outlining the computer screens. To draw the lines easier, I decided to turn the notebook around because then I can track the pen towards my body, which makes it a little bit easier to draw the straight lines. Now I'm writing out the days of the week with a cursive font. And by the way, if you draw on top of the acrylic craft pens with a black pen, it can smudge a little bit easier because the surface is a lot smoother. So keep that in mind and let the outlines dry a little bit before erasing pencil marks, for example. I started making my one line a day spread next to the calendar. I like to keep these pages side by side for some reason, and I think they look really nice together. You can see that the finish of the acrylic craft pens isn't very smooth on the top of this page, but I fixed that with going over it second time, which made it look a lot better. I often get questions on what I usually write in this spread, and I usually just write something positive about my day or something that I did. I will also write if I had a really bad day because I don't want to dismiss my negative emotions. Focusing on positive things can really help with keeping a more positive mindset, but it's also important to deal with the difficult emotions too. I used to write 3 good things that happened in each day, but after the pandemic I've been spending a lot more time indoors and my days sometimes feel quite the same, so I switched to this one line a day spread instead. I also write about my days on my weeklies, so just one sentence is perfectly enough space for me. Next I started making my habit tracker, and I decided to do mini calendars this month just for a change, as I don't feel like tracking my sleep and steps this month like I did in September. It's nice that when it comes to bullet journaling, I can change things up when I feel like it, and that's actually why I prefer bullet journaling instead of using a planner, and why planners didn't work for me. Before bullet journaling, I didn't write any kinds of to-do lists or even know how to use a planner, so that's probably why they didn't work for me. For this habit tracker, I wrote out the title with the same Tombow fudenosuke pen that I've been using all the headers this month. I also added the loading section on the right because that part was looking a little bit empty. For the mini calendars, I used a Tombow dual brush pen in the shade 992, and I drew just the calendar grid because writing out the little numbers takes forever. If I had only few habits to track, that wouldn't be a problem, but writing the numbers of the calendar 12 times is too much. I have done that before and wouldn't recommend. This month I'm tracking basically the same habits as I did last month, and I like to track some of these just for fun because then doing your habits doesn't feel like a chore. I also have habits that I try to do every day, like taking vitamins and making my bed in the morning. I didn't use a mood tracker last month and I missed it a little bit, so I brought it back for October. I used to struggle with mood trackers because they don't work for me if I have to color those in with different colors, and it was also hard to choose just one color to describe your day because my mood sometimes changes during the day. That's why I only do trackers that I can fill in with just a black pen that I used for filling out my weeklies as well. That's a way more functional for me, and it's also easier to remember to fill in the trackers. This is one of my two go-to layouts that I like to use. Setting it up takes some time, but using it doesn't, which is perfect. And for this layout, you can easily make it look a little bit different each time by decorating the middle part with doodles that fit your theme. I chose a book, clouds and a magical jar for this one, and I'm going to draw these in the same way as I did on the previous pages. First I'm going to color in the doodles, and then I will add some details and outlines. Usually I fill the daily boxes with different patterns that describe my mood, but this month I'm going to be adding little icons that you will see later. I've only drawn different kinds of leaves before, so I'm really excited about these icons. You can also add more than one icon to each box, which is nice if your mood changes. I will add a picture of a similar kind of tracker filled in so you know how it works. You can see how I'm going to be using my happy tracker as well. I wrote out "How are you feeling" PDF with my white jelly roll to name this mood tracker file. Then I started outlining the doodles so that you can see them a little bit better. The clouds would have easily blended with the grid otherwise. I also added a golden moon and some white dots to the book to make it look a little bit more decorative. Now I'm writing out the icons that I mentioned earlier, and I tracked 6 different moods, and half of those are positive and other half more negative. Then I started making my content planner that I used to have in the same spread as my plant tracker, but as I did a yearly plant tracker spread, I can put this now on its own page. On the top I have mini calendar to see the monthly overview, and for the planning I just have a simple list of the days of the month. For the decorations I added this small box which I'm going to be adding a quote later, and I also did 2 different sections for my to-do list and content ideas. I turned the notebook around once again so I can draw the straight lines more easily. And then I fixed some mistakes with my white acrylograph pen. For the little box I added a quote, "Be productive, not busy," to remind myself to manage my time in a more productive way. I also added some simple leaves and gold sparkles for the decorations. On the bottom of this page I added sections for tracking my social media growth. I don't like to look at the numbers too much, but it's fun to look back on these next year and see if they have changed. I also added some lines to the date section so that it doesn't look as empty. Then I finished off the spread by outlining the computer screens. On the right side I made a monthly review page, which is basically the same layout that I used in September as well. As you can see, I made quite uneven line with the dark brown acrylic craft pen, but I'm going to fix it soon with white pen. The second box looks a lot better and doesn't have as thick lines. In these boxes I'm going to write about my favorite this month and about the things that could be improved. On the box above I wrote out time to reflect, as it has sections for writing out my monthly successes and challenges. Writing about my successes has helped me a lot to notice the things that I do well, because sometimes I focus too much on the things that didn't go so well. Instead of failures, I like to write challenges, because challenges aren't the end of the world and you can always learn something from them. On the bottom I drew some crystals with leaves for decorations, and in this box I like to write some thoughts that I have after filling in the sections above. I usually like to write in this page in the last days of the month, and that's why it's usually empty when I post my flip-throughs. To finish off this spread, I drew the outlines for my little doodles. And I also wrote the review with gold gel pen on my title that I almost forgot. Then I added the grid to some of these boxes. And now for the final spread in this setup, which is my first weekly spread for October. I know this video has been super long, but I hope you have enjoyed it still. I cut out a lot of different parts and didn't really have any more things that I could have left out. To decorate this spread, I added a little box for the song of the week. I drew the same kind of dreamy landscape as I did on my cover page, and I will add the name of the song I listened later when I'm going to be using this spread. I used my acrylic craft pens from the Jewel set, and this is the 0.7 size, which is now the only size of the acrylic craft pens that you can get. Then I started writing out the days of the week with a cursive font. In this layout I will have a lot of writing space for notes and smaller boxes for the days. On the extra box I did a quote: "Procrastination is the foundation of all disasters," and this is a great reminder for me as I struggle with procrastination a lot, and sometimes that causes stress because I have to hurry to get things done. Bullet journaling has helped me a little bit with that though, because I can plan out my schedule. For the decorations I added some simple pink and grey leaf doodles, and I outlined everything with a black pen. I also added the light grid off camera, and you will see that soon from the final flip through. I really like the dreamy and magical vibes of this theme and also the colors. It was fun to do a more doodle heavy theme for a change, even though it took a lot more time to set up. I think I'm the most excited about this mood tracker and how it will look like in the end of the month. Thank you so much for watching, and leave a moon emoji in the comments if you are still here. See you in my next video, and bye bye!